Okay to do roll call?
Yep.
Okay, we're going to do roll call like we normally do. Make sure, I know we have at least one person online tonight, so we want to make sure we can hear each other. So again, when you hear your name, please say here. Starting off with Wendy.
Here.
Kristen.
Here.
David G.
Here.
Annie.
Here.
Tyler.
Here.
Oh, hold on, Tyler.
Here.
Yo, we got you now. Perfect. Thank you. Christine.
Here.
Leslie.
Here.
Patricia.
Here.
Rebecca.
Here.
Sean, well, should be in any time now. Brian.
Here.
Kelty.
Here.
David T.
Here.
Abigail.
Here.
And Wyatt, I don't think is online tonight. Good. Okay, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, next up is citizens' comments, not budget related. Is there anyone online, Donna? I mean,
Diane.
yeah. No?
All right.
All right, moving on, additions and adjustments to the agenda by the board or superintendent.
I don't have any at this time.
Anyone have anything you want to add? Moving on, looking for a motion to approve the minutes of March 6th.
We approve the minutes of March 6th.
Second. Moved by David, seconded by Patricia. Any discussion?
Roll call. Wendy.
Yes.
Kristen.
Yes.
David G.
Yes.
Annie.
Yes.
Tyler.
Yes.
Christine.
Yes.
Leslie.
Yes.
Patricia.
Yes.
Rebecca.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Kelty.
Abstain.
And David T.
Yes.
Abigail.
Yes.
Very good. Passes, and we had one abstention.
Next up is consideration of approval of the recommendations of the Facilities Transportation Subcommittee. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Jen?
No, we should take each one of those items one by one, and we try to reference where it was in the minutes of the agenda. So if you want to, ask any questions around that after we've made a motion, we would have those there. Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah.
So I'd be looking for a motion for the partnership with the town of Mount Vernon for a generator, installing a generator.
I move we enter into a partnership with the town of Mount Vernon for the installation of a generator at Mount Vernon Elementary School.
Second. Moved by David, seconded by Christine. Is there any discussion? Brian?
Oh, yeah, a couple of questions. What does it mean to be a shelter? Does that mean any investment on the part of the school over and above acceptance of the generator? And then second piece would be who takes care of the generator after we use it?
So on both questions, the first question is the town is really looking to create a space where people can come to warm up, cool down, et cetera, during times of emergency and crisis. So that's what they're kind of looking at. So the only investment on our part is allowing them to do that, to use that. But of course, during that, they wouldn't use they wouldn't use it as a center unless school is not in session, like school comes first. Which they're fine with. And then the second piece is they have agreed to maintain the generator as well, moving forward. So they're looking to invest in a grant to be able to do that, get it here and then do some investment with it. So. Yeah.
Thank you.
When they do need it, do we
Yeah.
have to approve? Or do they just have free reign?
They're going to call, they would call and contact us and say, can we use the school? And, we want to turn on the power kind of thing. So, yeah, they have to notify us first. first.
Okay.
But the good part of that is too, if the school loses power, we can kick that generator on and use it for our students as well, so.
David?
I really like the idea of working with the town, becoming a town center to a degree. And the fact that it adds a generator to that school is a bonus as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
I think both factors are really positive.
Any other discussion?
All right, we'll do a vote then. Wendy,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
David G,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Tyler,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Patricia,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kelty,
Yes.
David T,
Yes.
Abigail.
Yes.
So it passes unanimously. We will keep the board abreast of how that goes, because again, they're applying for a grant, so this may take a little bit of time before everything is kind of falls into place. But we'll let you know as soon as that happens, or as we take steps along the way.
All right, approval of expansion of ski hut.
I move we approve the approval of the expansion of the ski hut.
Having been moved and seconded, discussion? Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, the big thing is, what is it gonna cost the school, and is that part of the budget?
No, so it actually doesn't, they're doing it all through fundraising and donations. And the ski team is actually, like, they've been eyeing this for a while. So they've actually been doing some fundraising. They're not completely done fundraising, but we've talked to Sean Drinkwater. Ron Gifford's kind of heading it up. He came up with a schematic. He came up with all the important pieces for that. He sent me an email yesterday. They had an electrician come and look, and there's going to be a little bit of work that has to be done because he thought the conduit was bigger than it was and all this kind of stuff. So, we're trying to follow all the codes and all that kind of stuff, but they're doing all the fundraising for it. And the other part of this is Maine Cabin Masters are involved and doing some of the work for free for us. And they're looking to potentially make a TV show showcasing this little project. So it was kind of like, again, once the plans kind of came together, it seemed to make sense that we, don't let Gardner be the only ones that get the Maine Cabin Masters.
Full publicity.
Yes.
Is there, if somebody wanted to donate either funds or gravel,
Yeah.
crushed rock,
Yes,
pipe, or whatever to this thing,
yes.
who would be the best person? to do
Ron
that?
Gifford. Yeah, Ron is heading it up, and he's got a price list, he's got a materials list, all that kind of stuff. So he will take anything and anything that would help the project
Yeah,
along.
as I read it, I thought with the CATSI electrical program, I know they do some off-site work.
Yeah.
And that would be really cool to have
Yeah.
that program
Right.
actually get showcased
Potentially come, yeah.
on Cabin
Yeah.
Master
Yeah.
somehow. So the education piece ties together,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
it could save some money too.
Yes,
So I'll talk
absolutely.
to Ron about
That sounds
Thank you.
great. Thank you very much, Brian.
No, that is,
Yeah.
it's a great idea, and Chip Eastman over there
Yeah.
saved that program. So
Yeah,
he
yes.
sold his business. and
Yes,
wants
we're
to
doing
teach that.
fantastic.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other discussion about this? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote.
All righty, Wendy,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
David G,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Tyler,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Patricia,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes,
Kelty,
Yes.
David T,
Yes.
and Abigail.
Yes.
So it passes unanimously.
Alrighty, moving right along. Authorize the superintendent to seek assistance for completion of major school construction application.
I move that we authorize the superintendent to seek assistance for completion of major school construction application. Second.
Having been moved and seconded by multiple people, we will have discussion.
So just so people know, we again have to put, in order to be considered for this, we have to put all 6 of our buildings in, and that means going through them basically with a fine tooth comb. We do have a copy of the application if you'd like to take a look at it. I didn't want to print. It's like 20 pages long or whatever it is. So we just want to make sure as we consider this, it gives us a chance to really evaluate our facilities, find out what's working and what may not be working. And it also gives us the opportunity to potentially get on the school construction list and be able to invest in our schools using obviously state, a good chunk of state money there. And it only opens about every 5 years. And even if we make the list, there's a lot of things that have to happen. So one thing at a time. The first piece is let's just get the applications completed and kind of see where we stack up from that. So we would go through an RFP or request for proposals, and we'd be looking to have an architectural firm help us with that so that we make sure we meet all of the state guidelines that go into putting this application forward. So we would do an RFP as a first part of this proposal, and obviously that too has to get board approval. So that's the first step. So the other piece is this is due, it's either August 30th or September 30th. So it's a tight turnaround and we need to get moving. So it'll be a pretty big major summer project. So that's kind of why we're trying to move this. So again, it doesn't, I don't want anyone to go, oh, we're consolidating schools, because that's not what this is. This is just, let's see where we fit in the big picture of where our facilities stand in comparison to other facilities across the state. So it's one piece, and then we move from there based on the information we get back.
Leslie?
So in the evaluation of the schools, the fine tooth comb you talk about, is that with third-party help, or are we
Yes.
responsible for the?
No,
fine-tooth?
they would help us with that, and we'd be going to staff. And I know I apologize for saying it this way because nobody wants to say this, but we would be basically going into every single building and saying, tell me what's wrong. And we'd want teacher input because that's part of the process. So it's fairly intense and there's a lot of work to be done.
Is there any sort of outline, Jay, of the sort of general timeline that work sort of all takes that could be shared?
I can get that to you, absolutely.
That'd be
Yeah.
good.
And that's something the firm would help with.
Yes,
I
yeah,
mean, we kind of did something similar when we did
to the bond, yeah.
And we get this big book and it's like, holy cow, these buildings are tired. And you can only do like a third of it, or maybe a tenth of it. So be ready.
Yeah. So I'm excited just to kind of see where we stack up and and even if we don't make that construction list, then that gives us a roadmap of where do we invest in our buildings, which I think is worth the payout if we don't make any kind of construction list.
So is this in the budget? The money?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So a quick question. So I think just remembering from facilities, it was 37,000, I think, was the construction
Yes,
application.
yes,
So is that going
yeah.
to be an actual line item under an article, or is that?
Yes, it's
Okay.
part, it's
It
part
is.
of, yes,
Okay.
yeah, it has to be.
Right,
So,
okay,
yeah.
thanks.
And I know we budgeted for that, but it may not be all of, I don't want you guys to think, oh my gosh, that we're spending a lot of money on just an application. Know that it may not be that. We just want to make sure we had enough money to cover whatever the costs are for help, so.
Brian, go ahead.
Is it fair to say that at the end of that analysis, we'll have some sort of
Yes.
feedback for each of the
Yes.
different buildings we
Yeah.
own, operate, and maintain?
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's over $37,000.
Yeah.
Absent anything else, at least you'll have a really good baseline for
Exactly.
infrastructure improvements.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, we will call for a vote.
All righty. Wendy,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Tyler,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Patricia,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kelty,
Yes.
David T,
Yes.
Abigail?
Yes.
So it carries unanimously. So just so you guys know, there will probably have to be a special summer meeting because you guys need to see the application and vote on it before it's actually submitted. So we don't typically have meetings in July and August, but I'm thinking somewhere in mid-August, we'll probably have to have a special meeting just for that. So just giving you a heads up that there's still another vote before we can actually submit it.
I'll be there.
All right. Budget workshop time.
All righty.
So first up is co and extracurricular transportation, COVID grants.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've got basically three presentations. Brant Remington will do co and extracurricular. Kelly Thompson, the Director of Transportation, is here. She will do hers next. And then I'll briefly review where we are with ESSER funds, the ARP funds, which we're wrapping up, has to be done in September, but I want to give you guys a quick update on that kind of as well going forward. So having said that, Brant, if you don't mind going to the podium, you'll be up first. And we do have a slideshow again that, yeah. Yeah. Say, hang on just a sec, Brant.
Hopefully I can see that far. Well, first of all, thanks for having me tonight.
So while we're waiting, Brant told me yesterday about how excited the teams were that they potentially were getting outside this early in the spring sports seasons, and now we're looking at snow. So just,
Yeah, I told him, I said, don't get too excited. This is still Maine and it's still March. We haven't hit April 1st yet. But that's okay. We're way ahead of where we normally are, so. It's good. All right, what's that? Okay, I'll just kind of go through each one of these lines. So I'd like to add 3 coaching positions. One is JV football at the high school, roughly 39-22. Last fall, we had over 40 football players, and we had 2 paid positions. We have beefed up our program, so we're now going back to 11-man football. We've been an 8-man football team for 3 years, and that includes 1 COVID year. The goal of 8-man football is to rebuild your program so that you can eventually go back to 11-man football. We've done that so far. We've shown strong numbers for the next couple of years. So in order to, to supervise and to coach those young men, we need a 3rd coach. If you look around the 11-man football sidelines of the other teams that we play, some of them have 4 or 5 or 6 coaches. And if you know anything about football, it's very individualized as far as the type of work that they have to do. The second position is JV volleyball. This is for girls because right now it's just girls volleyball. We added volleyball last year. Actually, it was for this year. Very successful. The girls won the sportsmanship award for Class C, and they made the playoffs in their very first year. We had to drive all the way to Calais. If you've ever been to Calais before, it's a wonderful place. And we had roughly 35 girls participating in volleyball, and we got by with 1 stipend that we split between 2 coaches, and we had varsity and JV matches every time we played. So there's a definite need for a JV specific coach for that team. And then the third one is JV girls lacrosse. We've had girls lacrosse now since I've been here. My first year we added it as a varsity sport, and we've always had at least 29 to 30 girls participating and only paying 1 coach, whereas the boys have had similar numbers and we've been paying 2 boys coaches. So in order to be fair, I thought we needed to add a JV girls lacrosse coach because we have JV girls lacrosse games just as much as we do the boys games. Another increase would be in supplies, and this is due to inflation increases. Baseballs, basketballs, you name it, prices have gone up, just like loaf of bread and dozen eggs and all that. So in order to be able to purchase all the supplies that we need for our athletic teams, like to add $500 to middle school supply line and $1,500 to the high school supply line. Increased the uniform line for middle school by $2,000. 3 years ago, I wanted to start a uniform budget for both the middle school and the high school. We're almost there. My first year, I'd asked for a certain amount, and we kind of negotiated, I guess, for lack of a better term. We started year one with half those amounts. Last year, we increased the high school to the full amount that I'm hoping for. We kept the middle school at that half. And so by adding 2,000 to the middle school, that will bring those numbers up to, where I had asked for it 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know if you come to a lot of our athletic games, but we've done a really good job getting new uniforms. I think I've purchased probably new uniforms for 5 or 6 teams in the last year, and it's been mostly because of the help from that uniform line. So that way we can afford more supplies for the teams and some other things that we need. So thank you for those increases last couple of years and just asking for $2,000 more. Increase to the contracted services, portable toilets. I actually had dropped this back a little bit and I made that mistake. I should have kept it the same. I thought by having the indoor bathrooms down by the fields that we could eliminate the porta potties completely. But currently the way we use those bathrooms, they're not open all the time. They're only open during events. So we do need to have a porta potty on site for practices and some summertime things. And those rentals have increased, of course. So I'd like to add $100 back to the middle school line and $200 back to the high school line. Basically, I split the porta potty cost between the two schools over the year. We rent it roughly from April vacation to the end of October once the fall season is done. So it's roughly 9 months. And then the final one would be increased repair and maintenance. We just purchased a snowmobile for the cross-country ski trails. And so that will be an added cost as far as oil and maintenance on that machine. And we use that money for some other things around the facilities if we need it. So we wanted to add $500 to that. Total increase would be $15,216 roughly. Depends on the stipend and which level of coaches we get. And the only decrease I found was middle school dues and fees because that line is not being used as much as it used to. It still is used though for math counts and the math team at the middle school. And if we have any dues or fees associated with the middle school play. So that's my budget. And then the next slide will be my request for a turf field. Did you put that on? Where'd that slide go, Jay? I had that all ready to go. Any questions on that?
I hid that slide, Brent.
You can do it.
Leslie?
I do, Brant, when you mentioned the portable toilets down by the track because the building isn't open except for games, does that exclude when rec is in full swing on like Saturdays for? Rec
No, it's
soccer?
open for them now. So
Okay.
the rec programs and youth football,
Okay,
those we now are opening them up, and we have a custodian that comes down, opens them up, and then goes and closes them later in the day.
okay,
Yep.
that's awesome. The second question is around sports that we have at high school that don't have JV feeder. So there's no JV baseball.
Right.
I don't know if anybody approached you about that. Someone's.
Well, we
reached out
do
to
have a
you about
JV baseball coach, and we do sometimes play JV innings either on an off day, if we've got any pitching left, or we'll, in the NBC that we're part of now, we have the ability to add on JV innings to get some of those guys some playing time. Unfortunately, the last couple of years, we had a very small baseball team. So right now, we're working with 12 baseball players. So this year, we may not have any JV innings, but our middle school numbers are very strong. We had around 30 middle school boys sign up. We have a big 8th grade class, so the anticipation is that we'll be able to maintain that and have JV baseball. So
So
we have had it, when I first started 5 years ago, we had that, and we had probably 7 or 8 JV games that were on off days in the varsity, but the low numbers the last couple of years. We've kind of been in a lull.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, because we're in this forum, it'll be good if everybody's paying attention though to understand what you're talking about, because I'd hate to have kids discouraged going into middle school
Right.
thinking that there's a huge gap
Right.
and that there's no opportunity for that advancement with half-step.
Yeah, what we do at the high
JV,
school is
I
we
mean,
have
that
those
position
JV,
before.
yeah, we have those JV positions in every sport. You know, football, all those have JV potential. And a lot of times it just depends on numbers. Like this year with softball, we're co-oping with Winthrop, so because of that combination of the two schools playing softball, we're gonna be able to have 3 to 5 innings of JV level softball after the varsity games. So that way, we're trying to rebuild our softball program at the middle school, which has a strong number of kids who have signed up as well.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's really good, thank you.
yep, no problem.
My last question unfortunately bridges to maintenance a little bit, or grounds, because I'm only thinking of it now, which is between that middle school soccer field and coming across to the maintenance road. It's really a rough go through there. I didn't know if, and this, of course, it's not Brant's, you know,
Well, kind of, yeah.
bridge to bear, but like, pun intended, I guess, but could that get worked up in a better way that folks aren't stepping on just the right logs and getting across creek?
Are you talking about the Woods Trail that
The
connects the
Woods
middle school and the
Trail.
bathroom? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a trail that's been slowly kind of used by people. I don't think it was a really organized set trail. And then the outdoor classroom was built on this far end, right
Yeah.
over here. And so it
Opens
kind
it
of
up.
made it even more appealing to walk through
Yep.
there. I've mentioned it to our groundskeeper Lou a few times, like, pretty cool if we could drive our vehicles through there to get from
Yep.
one field to another. So I'd like to, that'd be a great exploration I can talk to Sean Drinkwater about. Might just be real simple, but clipping a few branches and whatnot.
Yeah, in a bridge of sort there, because
Yeah.
there's folks too that have trouble with mobility even, so like, even if they get to the field,
Yes,
like, for them to have to climb it again,
Right.
and go across and go back down, like, that's something I've seen people experience in a really rough way, so.
yeah, I think it's a great idea, and I can definitely talk to Sean and Lou about that. And
Okay, great.
we might be able to make it part of a map project for the high school kids, because they've done some projects like that.
That would be perfect.
Yeah.
That was my thought.
Yep.
All right, thanks.
No problem.
David, then
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for bringing back 11-man football team.
You're
It's-
welcome.
It's a big draw on a Friday night,
Yeah,
and in the last few years, I've seen it decline a little bit, and I think this is going to bring them back.
yeah, I'm excited. I know the guys are definitely excited. You know, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little worried about the size of crowds we're gonna get, because we're gonna be playing Winthrop, Lisbon, Oak Hill, Mount Valley, Durgo, and those schools travel really well for football, so we're gonna have a very packed Friday
Yes.
night here,
So
yeah,
thank
but it's
you.
gonna be exciting.
Yeah, thank
Yep,
you.
You're welcome.
Kristen,
Is that 3 outhouses?
One,
1?
Yeah.
Wait, why 100, 200? Oh, those are okay. Can you just explain how,
Sure.
so it's 1 down here?
yep, so there's one porta potty, it's a handicap accessible porta potty that sits down by the outdoor bathrooms that are there. I have 2 budget lines. I have a middle school contracted service line, because what we used to do is put a porta potty all the way out back. And then we used to do 2 porta potties down there before those bathrooms were built.
Okay.
So when I first started, I had a line from middle school to pay for one of them. And then
Oh,
the
I
high
see,
school line
okay.
paid for 2 of them, so.
Gotcha. I was
Yeah,
gonna ask
that's-
where the other ones were, but
Yeah.
okay.
And then when I decreased those lines because of the indoor bathrooms, their prices went up kind of same time. And this year was kind of like, oh, shoot. So we had to pull from a couple of different places, but if I have that increase, it should be okay to cover them. Yep,
Yeah.
no problem.
Leslie,
I had one more. You had some bleachers across the track when we had that really big game, I believe it was
Yeah.
against Old Orchard Beach.
Yeah.
And that was, I felt like was really helpful.
Yep.
Is that a type of solution that is able to be an ongoing use when you feel like, again, let's say our friends from across the lake?
Yeah, so we do have another set of bleachers that we need to get put together that was part of the Make-A-Wish Foundation
Yeah.
for the softball field.
Yeah.
That when we did that, we bought a larger set that were portable that we can pull with the tractor or whatever, and we can move it around. And the idea was that it could be for more than just softball. So in the fall, we could move it over there and add more seating. So since we've gone to 11-man, I have a plan that's in the back of my head as far as how the grounds is going to look. So that, you know, when teams are coming down and they're paying for their ticket at the gate, basically going to be encouraged to follow a path based on their school.
Yeah.
So our home base basically stay inside the fencing, use the large bleachers in this side of it, and then I'll have a lane that's going to be roped off for visitors to walk a path across the track and then get to that other side. It's going to be roped off so they have a section so that we can manage everybody that's there.
Yeah.
And then I've already talked to Jay and the administration at the high school about making sure we have enough staff members Now that we have an SRO, I've already talked to him about possibility of him maybe adjusting hours and hiring a sheriff so that we have one on both sides of the fields.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's back there. I just haven't fully written it out, but yeah,
awesome,
that plan's there for sure.
awesome.
You have a
I'm
question?
sorry.
Go ahead.
Brian.
Down at the middle school soccer field, I remember a couple of years ago, somebody broke their ankle trying to get to the field.
Yeah.
Is there anything that can be done to try to dry that area out and make
Yeah.
that little tight corner a little more passable? What, when Leslie was
I've
talking
I've
about?
asked, and the solution I think would be several sticks of dynamite. There's ledge there underneath, because I asked about, putting in some drainage and stuff like that, just digging it out. And they said it's underneath, it's just all ledge. So when we get a lot of rain, it just goes down and sits. That day that the lady fell, I had cones that were down on the hill and a path and a sign, be careful. And when we have days like that, I'm always around if people want to ride down on the Kubota, whatever. And a lot of people are real modest, saying, oh, I don't need a ride. And then, yeah, she fell. And she was very, very nice about it. I mean, she realized it. But yeah, maybe some railroad ties or something like that that could be put into the ground as steps could possibly help, or some crushed rock. But in order to do some ditching, it would take some dynamite, I think.
And no way to send it the other way, huh?
No. I'd like to send water lots of places, I'll tell you that right now. Yeah.
I had a question about sports shared with other schools. How does that work for the salaries?
Good question. So basically, it's kind of like with the softball this year, we're the lead school. So, we take care of what we normally would, like it would be just like Marana Cook softball. So it doesn't add anything to us. We're benefiting because Winthrop, who would normally pay a stipend for a coach, is paying a JV coach or an assistant coach, whatever you want to call that. First, they've already hired them. So we're actually going to have 3 paid coaches working with the girls in softball. So that's a benefit there. In the past, lacrosse has been more of a pay-to-play thing, so it hasn't been much of a factor. I think in another year, I've already been talking to the coaching staffs and Winthrop, that we might have to start charging the Winthrop players a playing fee to help cover, our supplies and stuff now that we pick up the supply costs for lacrosse. Because before, they did their own thing and they fundraised everything. So it was never a concern. Now that we're going to continue that, if we keep that relationship going with Winthrop in lacrosse, which I don't have a problem with, we might have to start charging them a fee to play to offset that and cover it. But because it's our sport, we're the main school, we cover the stipends, which means we control who we hire and fire and, stuff like that. That's what it currently is.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then we had 4 field hockey players that went to Winthrop this fall. And I said, what do you need from us? And he basically said, well, you take our lacrosse players right now, so we're good. Don't worry about it. So,
No, that's fair. I
Yeah.
just wondered how that all worked.
yeah. One thing, if we ever do anything like that, it would never take away from what, our players have for opportunities. We're close with girls lacrosse of being on our own completely. I mean, we almost could now. Co-ops are designed so that schools can have that sport offered to their athletes where they couldn't survive on their own. Like we couldn't have played field hockey last fall. We tried with 4 girls. It just doesn't work. And those 4 girls were lucky enough to go to Winthrop and be part of a state championship, which is pretty cool.
And the middle school girls got to play in the championship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Leslie, one more?
I have one more question. If, when you say we own something, meaning like we sort of host it here, like this is the home area?
Yes.
But we've had those instances though where it's Winthrop is the home sort of area. Now that we have, and I know this is going to cross over a little bit more with you and Kelly maybe, but now that we have like smaller buses or we have vans available, does that offer us the chance to transport our kids to go to that opportunity instead of them finding their own ride?
Currently, we don't have the ability to transport them to Winthrop for things. But just talking to Kelly and Zach recently and Winthrop AD, if we need help with transportation with our current teams that have Winthrop players on it, that possibility is there. So if I've got a date where softball's going to Mountain Valley, but we don't have any drivers available, we have the ability now to reach out to Winthrop and they would cover that for us. That works that way.
Is there a chance that that partnership would ever breach bigger to any situations where we for some reason don't have transportation, or the transportation schedule is off so far, the kids miss so much school, that we could use a neighboring school if they have buses and drivers available to help us, so we don't conflict in those situations?
Yeah, I think you'd better answer that one.
You'll have to go, Kelly, before you answer, you do have to go to the mic, sorry. Oh, look, Brand's gonna bring it right to you.
I do think that
But
there's
nobody,
that.
but nobody can see you, so you have to go to the podium. Sorry, Kelly.
I'm not Fran. Oh, this is a lot. So I do think that there's an opportunity, and amongst directors, like for Monmouth, for instance, we work out, can you get our kids there, or can you come get ours, we'll get yours back. We do that type of situation now as we can. Unfortunately, a lot of our districts are in the same boat where they're down 5+ drivers. So they have to cover the getting their kids home. And so they're contracting as well. So that's kind of the gist. If we can, we all try to work together and make it happen. I had a driver from school in Poland, actually. They said, if you need anything, if we could help you, let us know. So I meet monthly with the Maine Association of Pupil Transportation, which is all the directors of Maine, and that's kind of the conversation that happens. We do try to do that as much as possible, if it works out time-wise.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else have any questions? All right, thanks, Brent.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Brant, very much. Kelly, you're up
Can you
next.
come back up?
I like that. Oh, yeah, you can go.
You're all set.
So transportation. Thank you guys for having me here tonight and have the opportunity to talk to you. So there are a few things that we do have some increases that are coming to us. So on the drug and alcohol testing line, there is a change that began 2024, where it was, you had a pre-employment drug test, and then you were hired if you passed the drug test, and then you had random drug tests that required federally throughout the school year. And so not all of my drivers might be drug tested in that year, and some drivers might be drug tested 3 times. It just depended on how that random selection happened. As of 2024, all drivers will have to be drug tested annually. So that's an increased cost of about $600 across the board if we're fully staffed. So that's where that increase comes from. I'm also looking at right now adding 2 7-passenger vans to our fleet. We have, at this time, we have just one, and that vehicle is servicing an out-of-district transport for special needs, and it has 90,717 miles on it. If something happens and it goes out of service, we can't transport. So it's really a matter of kind of switching over our fleet a little bit and adding 2 more vans. We now have also added because of need, another out-of-district transport, which goes to Belgrade, to the Central Maine Learning Center. And so having those 2 vans with 1 van in rotation, if there were breakdowns, would be super helpful and safe. I have priced out 2 hybrid vans. They're Toyota Siennas, and they only come in all-wheel drive, which would also be a safety benefit for us as we're out on roads in the wintertime. So that's an increase of $27,000. And also we've realized, make sure I get this right, Mandy, the interest from our multifunctional vehicle that we purchased last year. So that has an increase of $3,910. So as we're looking at adding more vehicles to the fleet, we also then have to purchase the things that go with those vehicles, like our tablets and our routing software, not software, but equipment that goes on all of our vehicles, our radios that go on the vehicles, and our cameras. So that's about $4,800 to add those 2 new vehicles to our fleet. Also, I'm going to skip down past equipment purchases and go to the online subscription, because the $480, it's the data service. So we purchased that subscription for those 2 new vehicles, and that's about the cost of that for the year. So I wanted to make sure we got that in there. And the other piece that we have with software is a card printer for our RFID cards so that we can house those in-house. And we just need to have something that we can do replacement cards with. And it's expensive to do them out of house for that. So it's a one-time fee of $2,500 to set up the program and the software. And then we purchase our cards and would be able to offer those out to students with hopefully much more success in keeping them in their hands so that we can utilize those. But that is about $4,800, the total for those things. Then for the big ticket, I've added 4 new positions to transportation as transportation monitors for buses, or for actually, yeah, for our runs. So best practice would say that we have special needs students that we're transporting with one adult, that during the day they have 2, usually a one-on-one. But if something happened to our driver on that bus, we really have students at jeopardy on the side of a road somewhere possibly. So to have we have 1 bus monitor now, but we have 2 out of district runs going. So therefore, if we added another, we'd be covering our other out of district run. And then during our regular runs in district, we have a bus that is transporting special needs students that really should have also a bus monitor so that there's a safety component to that. And then at midday, we have 4 pre-K buses that go. And on those pre-K buses, they're loaded with 4-year-olds and 1 driver. And so if anything happened to the driver, we're looking at 4-year-olds on the side of the road without any other assistance. So this is a best practice ask, basically, of the school board, that for safety measures and to meet those, it would require these new positions. 1 would be a 30-hour-a-week position, and 1 would be, 2 would be 30-hour weeks, and 2 would be 20-hour-week positions. And it's a hope and a dream, but maybe we can come up with some ideas. Do you have any questions?
Okay, I'll go.
Can I
since-
say-
Oh, sorry. I
Sorry.
didn't know. So for the out-of-district runs, how many of those do we currently have total? Is my
2.
first question too. And then is there only 1 student on each out-of-district vehicle?
No.
Or okay,
There's
so
1
they're
student.
combined, they're both, okay, so it's 1 location that the 2 students are going to.
Nope.
Okay.
It's 2 different locations.
2 different
One
locations.
location is Lewiston and the other is Belgrade.
At Belgrade, and then, and there's 1 student, I'm sorry, I think I'm repeating myself, there's 1
We're
student.
transporting 4 students. So
4 students total, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
1
thank
to
you.
Lewiston and 3 to Belgrade.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And I mean, honestly, that can change in
Right.
a blink of an eye every moment. So however that, I mean, we could end up having to go to Portland. We really don't know. We just have to service that. So.
Kelty?
Sure. Real quick, I mean, I was just looking at your top drug and alcohol testing.
Yep.
I know it's $600, but whenever feds mandate things, it bothers me.
I know.
And I would like to know if you've explored grant money for such a thing. I'm also all for drug testing our bus drivers, but I just feel like we shouldn't have to eat that cost. We're not a for-profit yielding business. So is there anything that you've explored for them to provide some money to do
I
that?
haven't done that, but I could definitely look
Please.
into that. It's this, these guidelines that come down from the federal government for transportation and for CDL drivers is sometimes really just, it's fast and furious. It changes quickly.
Yep.
So I can definitely look into that to see. I'm not sure what's out there for grants for that.
Yep, thank you.
And just, that's a really good question from Kelty, and I just want to put that out there, that it is in the bus driver contract that we do pay for the drug and alcohol testing. So just so you know, contractually, that's an obligation that we currently have.
Expensive.
It is. I mean, and that's an addition to what we're
Yeah,
already doing. Yeah, so it is a big thing.
Patricia?
How many pre-K kids do you have?
on the bus? And have you ever had monitors on the pre-K bus?
I haven't had monitors on the pre-K bus since I've been doing this. I believe that there were monitors at one time, maybe not all the buses. I've heard stories of that, but I don't have the history on that. I will say that our lightest load for a pre-K bus is 2 students coming from Wayne. And our largest load, because we do a Manchester run where we pick up students and drop off students, so we have about 10. So, you know, and it varies, and then it just depends. We just drop off in the, we don't pick up from Mount Vernon because they don't have a pre-K afternoon. And it's just that they're so little, you know?
Oh, yes. I used to teach pre-K and K.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can see why you want to monitor.
Well, and go ahead, Diane.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
Before Tyler, just real quick before, one of the things like, again, with pre-K, we actually seatbelt all of our pre-K students. That's a recommendation and not a requirement, but we've chosen to seatbelt, you know, our students, and we've been doing that since, for quite a long time. So,
Good idea.
it is. But, you know, there's always, you know, they're little ones and they know how to get out of those seatbelts really quickly.
So Leslie, Tyler, and then Christine. So Leslie.
Kelly, my question is around the cards.
Yes.
Where my kids haven't been using the cards.
Yes.
So, and they have broken or they've gotten lost. So if we have been getting by without cards, what's the necessity to have the cards?
So there's a couple of different things, and I haven't, one of the things is that it's for bus drivers. It's when you're going to load 48 kids at an elementary school and you have to manually do that, and they don't want to wait. And I think every principal here at the elementary school can tell you how it takes time. But if a kid can just scan, and this comes down to our department doing better education for families around how important the cards are, but to scan it, it's really quick and easy. A sub driver doesn't know all the students or who they are, and so they load the wrong student onto the bus. We've had situations where we've had to use that information from that to prove a student was on a bus for safety reasons. But the cards just expedite the transportation. Also, when you're on the road and you're loading, like some stops might have 5 kids, it's quicker when you're just, kids are scanning their card, scanning their card, scanning their card. When you're doing sporting events, it's really much faster to get, 20 kids loaded from a sports team, because this is not their normal driver. So he doesn't know who they are. A lot of times we'll give the tablet to the coach and have them load them because they're more aware of their ridership. But I feel like, in all fairness to the drivers, that's one thing. And retention of drivers is a huge deal. And so we can do everything we can to recruit, but we want to make sure that we're doing what we can also to make their jobs a little bit easier. So that's one reason. And the other reason is that once we have them, we're more accurate. So with that being said, with the driver having to manually do that, we may miss dropping off your child at your house, and then they drop them off at the next stop. There's an app, Brett left, but he just got it for his, it's different program, but same idea. You would be able to see, oh, okay, my kid just got dropped off at home, they're safe. Or now they're at school, or, oh, they just left Mount Blue from the big game, so they'll be at Marina Creek in 30 minutes. It would give you an option if you wanted to download the app to be able to see where your son or daughter is for loading and unloading purposes and for location.
So is the app available now?
It is available now, but the reason why I haven't used it is because of the inaccuracy of a driver manually doing it, and I don't want to send a panic to a kindergarten parent that looks like their kid was dropped off on Main Street and not at their house. So there's some. So I feel as though we could get the opportunity to be able to do replacement cards quicker and to do that in-house for less money and then create more education with the rollout, I think we would be going in the right direction.
Tyler?
Thank you.
Kind of building on that point for the ID card readers, and then I'll get into my other point. Why are we like I'm at college now at Nichols. I lose my Nichols ID, it's a $50 fine every time I lose it. and that covers the cost of printing the IDs. Do we have a system? You know, I give everybody one ID a year, maybe one loss, but I mean, at a point, the district should not be eating the cost of everybody losing these IDs. And then if we're not going to go in that direction, why are we paying for this system if we're not fully using it?
It is part of our current routing system, so it's part of that program. So it's another component of it. And as far as charging for that, we haven't gone there because all students have the right for transportation to get to school. So it's really tough to say if you've lost your card, your parents have to pay $5. You know, there's situations where that would be challenging for families. I'm open to that discussion if that's where we need to go. That helps.
Charlie, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, and my other question is on the monitors. So the way I'm reading this is we have 4 part-time positions. I mean, wouldn't it make more sense to have 1 full-time position and 1 part-time? I see $146,000 and a 7% overline budget increase, and I have a hard time with this. You know, $600 here, $400 there is, you know, is fine. I see that, and I see the butt in the vans, and it just seems like a lot of increase when there's a lot of increases to the towns overall, especially when this looks like a lot of part-time positions when it could be better solved maybe with 1 full-time position, or, you know, incorporating the SRO that we added last year. That's kind of my general thoughts on that.
The only problem with that would be I couldn't get 1 person on 4 different buses at one time. So it was just a matter of covering buses en route.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I was going to ask about, and I'm asking this from an informed position where I've had to do these runs to Central Maine Learning Center and, you know, Margaret Murphy and all of those places and trying to find aids for those buses. But one of the things that we've done is utilized part-time ed tech positions and kind of made those full-time and added a job description for transportation. So I am just going to ask that because of the same reasons that Tyler just said, the increase to the overall budget is something that we need to reduce it. And those 4 positions, that's a significant increase in my mind. And so I'm just hoping that we can problem solve and try to work with either what we have or adding fewer positions to meet those needs. The other question I have is, why is Central Maine Learning Center not doing their own transportation? They in the past have done their own transportation. Are they not doing that anymore for the $600 a day price tag that we pay? They're not doing that anymore.
When we go to drop off, it's a hodgepodge of vans and stuff coming in and out of there. And they're coming from all over the place. It's pretty wild.
They don't transport anymore. They don't pick students up from, that used to be a benefit of, okay.
Yep. But I think that, you know, I think that just the solution of ed techs is something that we definitely need to look at as well.
Or even we've also used like people who work in food service who wanted a couple of extra hours, they would do a run. So just being really creative, and I know how hard it is. And thank you so much for your work, because I think transportation directors are like, I mean, I don't know when you ever sleep, but so that was just my comment about trying to figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
I just want to add, I think it's not a conversation for today, but we really got to get clarification on this card system.
Yes.
My kids said it's not being used. I've gone on 2 field trips where literally we sat in the parking lot and I had to call out kids one by one to the front of the bus, and it delayed us by a half hour on 1 field trip for the band last year. Because every kid, no one had their card, and I didn't know their name and how to spell their last name.
So you understand.
Yeah. So we really got to crack down if we're paying this money.
Yeah, I think too, I agree, and I think that I've reissued cards twice to the district for students and with information and conversation, but I think I just have to do a better job of education for parents, so.
Right, thank you.
But not all cards are lost and get broken. Like you try to have them and they just break.
Oh, I'm aware.
Like there's just,
Yeah.
so it's not about losing them as much as there's not a sustainable way so far that we've seen that we can keep them whole.
Just realizing with this discussion that that was what was attached to my son's backpack this whole year.
It's okay. We went into schools, our drivers, and we attached them to every student's backpack so they would be readily available and on there. We've even talked about like collecting them once they get off the bus, giving them back, there's been lots of different ways trying to figure it out, or to attach them to lunches and libraries so that they had more value to them, but there's some sticky parts with that too, on how do we get these lanyards off kids for recess. So we're working through that.
So it's a lot like our swipe cards. It's the same kind of concept. And unless you put them in some kind of protector, and I got a hard leather one because mine is broken, and it's not anyone's fault. It's just like I put it in my pocket, I throw it in my car seat, that kind of thing. So it's a challenge. Yeah. All right, we will let Kelly step down. And again, we let Brant leave, so Kelly, if you've got to run, we understand as well. So thank you very much for being here. Yeah. So the nice thing is I don't have to talk very much about the COVID grants because we're basically at the end of them. So the sheet that just got handed around is what was done was we cleaned it up just so that you could see all of the projects that came out of the ESSER 3 or the ARP COVID grant that had come through. These were all the projects that you're looking at for that ESSER 3. What was spent, the whole rundown. I'm not going to read that list to you. I'll let you guys kind of peruse that. The important thing that you need to know that at the current time, we have about $148,000 that we're still left to spend on this grant that needs to be expended by September 30th of this year. That money is earmarked for the last round of summer school. Remember, this will be our third year paying out of this grant for summer school. Credit recovery at the high school, they use a program called Edgenuity. That will cover Edgenuity for basically through the summer school and into the end of next year. We'll get the override of actually being able to continue to use the program, but we'll make one more payment to cover that program. And then we will have we're looking at instructional materials K through 8 that we can use our remaining money on. So just so that you guys kind of know, that's the plans for the leftover funds. Everything else at this point has basically been spent. So we are whittling it down, and I will say that there is a huge amount of reporting that has gone with this money, and between Karen and Mandy, they spend a lot of time having to file reports on how this money is spent and get reimbursed for it as well. So they've done an amazing job staying on top of this and making sure we're using the money in a very effective and strategic fashion. So if I didn't recognize them, that would be a very grave mistake on my part because they put a lot of time into this. So I can answer any questions, although there may not be a whole lot.
Just a quick question. The COVID nurse, which school is that specific to?
So, so when we added a nurse in, we added it at the elementary level because there is a full-time nurse at the high school. There was one at the middle school, but we were splitting 2 nurses, basically one big school and one small school. So the extra nurse has basically, for the last couple of years, has floated between Mount Vernon and Wayne. So they spend their time, they kind of divvy up their time based on the needs of the school and stuff, but it's been Mount Vernon and Wayne.
Thank you.
Yep. Other questions? Okay, I'll step down because,
Pat,
sure.
So will there still be a nurse in Wayne and Mount Vernon?
So right now, there is in the budget, yes. That's something we're going to have to discuss going forward. Because again, remember, and I don't mean to pick on the nurse position, so please, I hope nobody online or anyone here thinks I'm trying to pick on the nurses. Before COVID, we had 2 nurses and each of them did 1 big school and 1 small school. And again, they divvied up their time based on the needs within those 2 buildings that they were serving. So during COVID, we made the choice to do that because there was such a great need during COVID. And of course, we're theoretically back to normal. So having said that, that's why that's a discussion that we need to have is, do we continue to need that extra nurse, or can we go back to the old model of 1 big school and 1 small school? And that's just one example, so. Okay.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Tyler's got one.
Go ahead.
On the elementary principal, how much of that was on SRF and how much of that did we absorb for that when we expanded to have full-time principals at Wayne and Mount Vernon?
So the first 2 years, it was fully ESSER funds, but on the 3rd year, we did, most of it was still ESSER, but there was a small percentage, and I don't know off the top of my head, that was covered through the regular budget.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that, yeah, that was the only other position I had a question on. All right.
You good, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
Anyone else? Just before, okay.
Okay. I'll step down, and we've got more fun papers coming around to you that we'll review. I'm going to wait just a moment to make sure they get around to everybody here, and then we'll run through them, and then we can open it up to discussions.
Okay.
I think everybody's got them, so we want to start on that first page that says 6B. This is the warrant article summary, but it also has where we are currently. So I want to let you guys know that I did ask Mandy to back out the high school technology integrationist is retiring this year. We've already accepted their resignation. So I did back that out. And again, one of the reasons why I did it is because it's always easier to slim your budget using attrition than it is to actually have to cut people. So I did back that out, knowing that that is going to have an impact on the technology department, specifically at the high school. I also backed out, I know Kelly just eloquently talked about her need for bus aids, but I did back that item completely out as well, that 146,000, which is not a surprise to her. Her and I had a talk yesterday, and I said, I want you to present your budget, but we kind of have to move because we're getting to that point where we have to make some decisions. So like Christine had talked about, being creative about how can we staff those in a different way. There's some great examples out there that I think we can draw on. But I did say to Kelly, I want you to be able to, with a straight face, present what you were asking for. But we did back that 146,000 for those 4 positions out already. So you will notice when you're looking at that bottom line, that if you go all the way over at the difference, we started at 7.5 last time. Those two things alone dropped the budget by about a percentage. So we're at 6.49, basically 6.5. But we're still up $1,400,000. So again, just so that you guys can kind of see how positions look in the budget, we've got that there. So that's the first page. And again, I'll just run through everything and then we can come back and ask a bunch of questions. And again, I will say to Mandy, if I misspeak, you certainly can jump in anytime, okay? The next one is the second draft of the revenue, working through that. And the only change you will see is the backing out of the two positions, or the high school integrationist and the 4 positions that Kelly had requested through the budget. So that's really the changes you'll see on this page reflect that. Again, I'm not going to go line by line, but we can certainly come back to it and look at it. And again, as you look at the third page, which is the local dollar calculation, you can see what the impact of backing that information out, or those requests out of the budget look like in terms of the impacts to the town going forward. You'll notice backing that out, that next year's kind of district average increase, decrease to the local dollar or local towns drops down to 9.3%. So again, as you reduce your budget, that their expected contribution in the model that we use starts to drop as you go through per the town. So again, that's what this sheet just reflects, is that amount of money that we have cut out of the budget, that 1% going forward. Okay. And then kind of the last two sheets, I again wanted you guys to see everything as close as possible. So when you're looking at this, remember that's the one with the color-coded different items there. It starts with yellow department, item cost, or item request and cost. I wanted you to see what was asked for, that's increases to the budget from all of the departments, buildings, directors, et cetera. So their request on their side that they're asking for comes out to be a little over $442,000. That increase accounts for 1.8, almost 2% of the current budget. I was using the first draft when I calculated that amount. So they aren't asking for a crazy, it's not crazy in terms of what they're asking for. But that side we can control. We can go back and look at that and say, we don't want this, we want this, that kind of thing. But again, I think their requests, they've done a fabulous job of making sure they stay within reason. And there's really no wish list stuff here. It really is stuff that benefits the students, takes care of curriculum, takes care of our technology needs, takes care of our facilities needs, transportation needs, et cetera. Then the other column that does the budgetary contracts, these are our fixed costs. We really don't control these. It's not at our discretion to basically be able to say, oh, we're going to cut X amount from this. So we have contracts that we're still in negotiations with for the support staff and for the professional staff. So we don't have a number there, but there is going to be a number there eventually. What the bus driver contract increase looks like, what the administrator contracts look like, what the central office contracts look like. And then when you go down the list, you're looking at your fixed cost of, electricity, oil, propane, diesel, et cetera. And what that looks like, we were actually able to reduce, believe it or not, that line because we had kind of, for lack of a better way to say this, Mandy, we kind of had budgeted extra for last year. So when we look at our actual expenditures, we realized that, wait a minute, we budgeted all of this money, but we're actually can budget down here because we're not using that much. So, so that was a really good thing. Health, we budgeted at 12%, health insurance, dental at 7%. We don't have the exact figures for those yet. So I can say with about 95% competency, I don't think they're going to be higher than that. I think they'll come in lower than that so we can, again, back those numbers down. But we won't know those for at least a couple more weeks. I just want to be upfront with you guys about that as well. And then with our insurances, Mandy, you want to explain that one? Because that one's a little more complicated.
Yeah, so the insurance, last year we were told to budget for a 24% increase, and we were fortunate that it did not come in at a 24% increase. So when budgeting for next year, I don't budget off the previous budget, I budget off the previous actuals. So they're telling us 15%, but I'm going 15% above actuals, not 15% above last year's budget, if that makes sense. Yeah. So we didn't really end up having to increase the budget for that one.
Which is fantastic. And then there is the new paid family medical leave law that goes into effect. The district has to pay, and again, Mandy, if I misspeak, please correct me. Starting in January of 2025, we basically have to start collecting a tax for paid family medical leave. The district share is half of a percent of salaries, of a salary, of the district salary line. The other half is contributed by the employee. So 0.5% is contributed by the employee. But this is a little complicated. They're not going to be collecting starting next year, January 2025. They're going to start collecting in January 2026 from the employees, but they're collecting from the district starting in January 2025. So we budgeted kind of 1% because we weren't sure how this was all going to shake out, because they're actually going to make the rules for this in May. Thank you very much, which just kind of means we're left hanging a little bit. So we felt it would better to be a little cautious and go a little bit higher than to get stuck not being able to pay that tax, so to speak. And I say tax very loosely, but that's how they're funding the program, is employers contribute 0.5% and the employees contribute 0.5%, and they're going to build it up. You actually can't take paid family medical leave until January of 2026. So this is like that interim where they're trying to build the bank up. But who manages that and all that stuff? I have no idea right now. No, Mandy does not want to manage it. Yeah. So it's kind of, yeah, we're waiting to hear that. So again, we just budgeted a little higher. We went 1% of our salary and benefit lines, just so that we have ourselves covered no matter what the rulemaking ends up being. So again, when you're looking at that column without the support staff and professional staff is at $421,900. And again, that doesn't include whatever the support staff and professional staff increases are going to be. Those haven't been nailed down yet, obviously. So that's kind of where we are right now in terms of the budget, so that you kind of have an idea of what you're looking at as you're making decisions around, do we stick with this 6.5%? Do you want to bring that lower? What does that mean? So again, the final page, what I did is I put together some positions, because again, if you're looking to cut significantly in the budget, it's going to have to come through positions, because there's not a lot here to cut. I mean, I think that's apparent. So what I did is I put together some positions. So I already said no transportation, no to the bus aides. We will come up with something that's already gone. And same with the high school technology integrationists. That's already been eliminated from the budget. So those are gone. I did find out earlier this week that the elementary library ed tech, currently we have an elementary librarian that serves 4 elementary schools, and we have a full-time library ed tech, and we have a part-time library ed tech. Both of the ed techs are leaving at the end of this year. So I think it's the appropriate time again to reduce in that department. So it has not been removed yet, but a 0.6 library ed tech, I think, is an easy call for savings at this point. And I say that a little bit tongue in cheek because anytime you cut anything, it's going to have a human impact in terms of others having to pick up the load that goes along with that. So I don't mean to sound cavalier in any way because I know it impacts everyone. So those were my ones, kind of like my low-hanging fruit, so to speak. And then you'll see the 2s going down the list. The first couple are all positions that were funded by ESSER. So we just talked about the elementary nurse, the elementary guidance. Again, we added guidance counselor in during COVID. The way it was before, again, was the 2 that were there split their time between, you know, a big school and a small school, basically. So we would go back to that model if that's the case. The elementary principal, also, again, we added through ESSER. We could go down to 1 principal who would service the 2 small schools. But if we do that, I might come to you with a slightly different proposal where we restructure that so that you know, I have an idea, but until I have to flesh it out, but I have an idea where we could kind of restructure it a little bit to make it so that it's not just a burden for 1 principal to cover 2 of the small schools, because that sounds like, oh, it's a no-brainer, right? But they're tier 3 schools, and there is an immense amount of work. As I look at Jeanette and Michelle over there, there's an immense amount of work that goes into it. And having to manage 2 tier 3 applications, funds, grants, all that kind of stuff over 2 schools, it would be super challenging. So we're going to have to look at that and say, how do we structure if we go down that road? The math ed tech was funded by tier 3 funds. And again, I'll be honest, that position has not been filled this year. We haven't found anyone. It's still a number 2, but again, it might be an easy one if you're looking for, you know, quick savings. The other thing was, again, in Wayne, we went up to full-time math and full-time literacy interventionists. Pre-pandemic, it was half-time. So we had actually 2 people. They spent time in a classroom, part of their time in a classroom and part of their time being an interventionist. So again, it is possible we could go back to that model, or we could again kind of restructure and maybe we just have 1 interventionist that covers both math and reading kind of thing. So again, there's some options there. We currently have 1 middle school position that is currently a long-term sub. So what is the middle school is looking at some restructuring thing. I have kind of pushed them pretty hard when it comes to looking at numbers and forward thinking. So it is very possible for them to, instead of having 14 teachers is what they currently have for team teachers, it is very possible that they can do the same things with 12 team teachers rather than 14. So again, that's part of the discussions that are happening in the middle school through their talk about how, you know, what their structure is looking like. We also, I know we've talked about technology quite a bit. With the technology integrationist that's retiring, do we want to go down to 1 technology integrationist and again, kind of restructure and look at their job responsibilities and what they do across the district? And again, that might have an impact on, we have 2 elementary technology ed techs that work in classrooms. And again, if we're, you know, could we do some restructuring of some kind? I'm just putting the stuff out there. I'm not saying at this point I have any hard and fast plans because I don't. I really need your direction so then we can then go back and look at, okay, what are our plans to be able to absorb, you know, these positions? And then the last thing that I have up there, and I know it's Very unpopular, but it is something I need to make you guys aware of, and I did put it as a 3 because this may not be the right time to kind of approach it. But we do have 3 languages at the middle school. That is unheard of around our state, not just in our region, but around the state. We did some research to find out what's being offered regionally around us and stuff. And I'm happy to share this with you guys if you want to take a look at it. But we are language heavy in the middle school. I'm not willing to go to the high school at this point because again, that's credit bearing. And if you want to have students be competitive when they're going to schools, to some of the kind of upper echelon schools, they need to be able to get to the language 3 and the language 4. So I'm not willing to go there at the high school right now, but the middle school language is not a requirement. It is something that we have chosen to offer, and I think it's a feather in our cap. I am not proposing remove the languages from the middle school. I am proposing that we do need to have a conversation about, can we sustain 3 in our budget times, and do we have to make, some hard decisions and then look at what the impact is at the middle school. So, I am saying going from 3 language teachers to 2 seems very reasonable at this time. And I can read this all off to you, or I can share it with you guys later for you to process. So, because there's a lot of information there. So, I'm going to stop there. And having said all of that, I will turn it back over to you, Sean. And I know you guys will probably have some questions and some discussion.
There's a lot here. There's a lot of discussion that needs to happen, so I hope people have questions. So we will start with David.
Yeah, I'd hate to see any of this go away.
Yeah.
I don't want to go backwards. I really don't. But my question is, you guys calculate, what does this equal as a point compared with 6.49?
Yes.
Because you said we can go lower. Have
Yes.
you calculated what
Yes.
this would represent?
Yes. If we did everything on this list, you'd be going down to probably very close to,
5.something.
it's about $1 million right there in those positions. So you'd be going down to less than that. You'd probably be looking at, we already took 1 off. You're probably looking at somewhere between 3 and 4%. If you took everything on this list, you'd be looking at somewhere between 3 and 4%. Am I estimating right?
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah.
All right. Leslie, I think you're next.
Boy, did I have a question. Okay, now here it is. Around language.
Yeah.
Because I'm not totally current with what requirements are.
Yeah.
So is there a gain back if students could elect to take the language versus being required to take the
Right.
language?
Yes.
So in turn, that maybe it frees something up to cover something else.
Right.
If there were students that didn't want to
Right.
elect
Right.
to take a language.
Right.
And let's say would rather take phys ed.
Right, exactly, yeah. There are kind of other models out there where they introduce language at 7th grade or 8th grade because they know they need it for when they get into the high school and just to kind of prep them and get them ready. So yeah, they're definitely, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah. I don't know if I'm answering you totally right, but
Well, just
I
that,
understood you, yeah.
the idea is coming from a place that you don't have to eliminate any of the language offerings, but it's not a requirement
Yeah.
for a student to take
Right.
it, which may lessen how
Right.
much of the burden is there that may
Yeah.
free.
the
capacity.
language teachers, and I know, and I apologize, but I do kind of, to answer your question, have currently have the lightest student loads. So if you're looking at equity across teachers, they have the lightest teaching load right now. And I know that's not popular to say, and I know there's people online, but there is a language class, for example, that has 4 students in it. So
In the middle school?
yes,
So then is
And
that-
it's year
is-
round.
Is that resource helping
right.
in other capacities?
We could make better, we could equalize teaching loads by not having 3 languages, I guess is what I'm saying to you. That language teacher can't now go teach math as an example, or go teach, language arts class or science class. They can't because they don't have the certification. They can only teach language, so.
I have Tyler next online. Tyler, go ahead.
I took language in middle school. I took language in high school. I was one of the first German students to score advanced in speaking. So I understand the importance of it fully. I hear 6 students in a class, and I think we always have the option. I don't know how it would work logistically to send whatever language we decided to consolidate. And correct me if I'm wrong, we can send the student up to the high school. If there are students that really want to take it in middle school, there are ways that I think we could send them up to the high school and utilize them up there, especially if it is such a low number. My other question, again, comes back. You said the technology integrationist is retiring?
Yes, we have 1 technology integrationist at the high school that's retiring.
And then we have another 2 one at the middle school, one at the elementary? Okay. Because that's another area where I think maybe retain the ed tax and then have the integrationists kind of oversee and adjust some of that workload onto the ed tax and make adjustments there. But I'm kind of going along with David here that I'd like to be under 5%. I mean, I think we've done a lot of big increases, and I think we've learned a lot through COVID with expanding these positions. Like, for example, I really like to retain the elementary principal. I think having the leadership and the change we saw at Wayne and Mount Vernon when we made that adjustment during COVID, especially at Wayne with the reduction in turnover, I think was huge and beneficial for institutional knowledge. But I think we need to look at some of these ancillary services and where can we better utilize resources.
Right, Patricia, you next.
Would it put them behind if they want to go on to the language in high school and don't have a chance to take it?
Not really. Like right now, 8th graders can take for lack of a better way, and if I don't say this right, Rick, I think you know a little bit about this too, so jump in. We do have a mechanism in place which allows a student who, as an 8th grader, can earn credit for like French 1. So when they get to the high school, they can actually start right away with French 2. So it puts them a leg ahead a little bit. So we do have a mechanism in place where you can actually get some of that ahead. But I don't know how many students actually do that or don't do that. I don't know, Rick, if you have any idea about that. And I don't mean to put you on the spot because I don't have that info in front of me either. So, yeah.
Right. Anyone else before David? You've gone. I'm just trying to get everyone once.
So it would be helpful to have a line with, I don't know if this is on. It would be helpful to have a line with what, I know we have some of the estimated costs
Yep,
in the grant. I don't know.
that's ESSER stuff, yeah.
But it
So,
gives the
yeah.
estimated cost in the grant,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
So like the nurse, it gives
Yeah.
estimated cost. I mean, some of them you have to do the
Yeah.
math, but.
But
yeah,
I wouldn't go by the figures on that because that was
They're
on the
estimated.
application.
yeah.
And that's
Okay.
what they originally
Okay, well,
estimated
then
it
this
at.
aside,
Yeah.
it would be helpful to see
Yeah.
what each.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can get you that. I thought I had it here, but I'm not finding it very quickly, so I'll keep looking.
All right, Brian?
Yeah, I had 2 questions, so I'm gonna cut in a line. First is, one thing I hear a ton about, man, wouldn't it be nice to have the late bus? So what does that cost? And you don't need to answer that tonight. I know it's like, it's a third rail kind of thing, and I'm sure we can afford it, don't have the bus drivers or everything, but that was certainly a huge help growing up in Mount Vernon. And the second is, I can't get around the $7,500 drill press. Everybody else, you know,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
yeah. It's a commercial drill press
Yeah.
that's specific to metal only. So I don't know what that means. I
No,
don't have
I'm
much
just-
more than that.
just keeps jumping out.
Do you have anything else, Frank? No. All right. David, I'll let you, oh, Annie, sorry.
Just real quick, regarding the principal positions, I feel like I need to know more about if there were to just be one principal position, what the restructuring would be like. I'm very nervous about putting that work onto one person. It sounds like the work is, it's a huge amount of work for morale, for everything. So if there were to be a potential restructuring, if we had to just go down to one, what that would look like.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I want to do it.
I can do that for the next meeting. I'll flesh it out and talk it over with some people. There.
Just wondering if there's a way that I think I know that one of the elementary positions, principal positions, does not include summer.
Both of them actually, both at Mount Vernon and Wayne are just basically school year positions.
So I
Yeah.
wonder if if
Mm.
a full year position could maybe be offered to include, I mean, 2 tier 3
Yeah.
schools and applications is definitely a lot, but just trying to think about
Yeah.
how to do all this.
Yep.
David,
Yeah, I'm just, had a quick one again. Everybody had a turn, but there was a question on the language a little bit. You said we were already, at this point, the middle school was a little ahead of the state norm.
Yeah.
Can you explain how are we a little bit ahead? What's our
Yeah.
position compared to the rest of the schools? And,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
the rest of, if we are on par with school, I think I would feel better
Yeah.
knowing that, you know,
Yeah. Well, like, this is, what I mean by that is like this statement, and I'm going to use RSU 2 as an example. They have 8 language teachers, but they're servicing 1,900 kids. We have 6 language teachers and we're serving 700 kids. So that's what I mean by like, we're a little askew from that. Lisbon High School has 350 students. They have 2 language teachers. Yeah, Winthrop actually does, they have 2 language teachers, and those 2 language teachers service both the middle school and the high school. And you're looking at 500, a little over 500 kids in that school. Again, it's size specific, but you know, we do, you know, when you're breaking that down, you almost have to think we have 3 language teachers. If it's all split equally, they would have 100 students.
And I totally agree
Yeah.
too, if it comes down to it, we have to eliminate, because I like seeing lower numbers. Yeah, you could send an 8th grader up to the high school.
Yeah. Yeah, it would take some coordination schedule-wise, but again, that would be, you know, a big, but it could happen.
Hate
It
losing
could
the
happen.
language,
Right, right, exactly. Like, I put it as a 3 because it is a hard sell, and I don't want anyone to walk out of here or online think that I don't think language is important, because I absolutely do. It is a key piece of future success moving forward. And honestly, if we could do language at a lower grade, I'd be all for it, you know, as well. So this is just purely looking at numbers and equitable use of resources and equitable teaching loads and equitable opportunity for all kids and stuff. So that's kind of what I'm looking at.
Leslie?
So only a creative idea is the additional capacity that maybe isn't being used today could be for seeking more grant opportunities. One of the things we've talked about is having somewhat of a dedicated person, instead of it being spread everywhere on top of what other people do, is to try and consolidate that sum, so we sort of have a person. So I don't know if there's opportunity in some of what we're talking about that we can then be leveraged, and then it's not cutting and it's not adding.
Right.
But it's better utilizing if those language teachers also don't have the ability to flex to something else to service another need.
So this might be naive in that I'm saying it publicly. At what point, I mean, I just really think that a couple of times since I've been on the board, and it hasn't been long, but I've heard a couple of people talk about consolidation. And I thought that at some point, Jay, you had said that's something that the board needs to ask you to consider or to do. Is that right?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, I think we need to start talking about that. Because it's just for all the obvious reasons. Neighborhood schools are fantastic. I love our neighborhood school, you know, I mean, all the great things, but it's, I'd love to hear what other board members think about, you know, starting a conversation about consolidation.
All right, Rebecca, go ahead.
I agree with that. I think that we could probably efficiently use our resources a lot better if we consolidated them. So yeah, I think the conversation does need to be.
I'd like to,
I think we're starting on that road this summer, right, with a $37,000 architectural analysis of the needs of all the structures that we have. So that's sort of step one in a process to say which of these structures really needs a ton of work, and then you have to kind of figure out, well, what does it cost to bus people somewhere else, and where do you build a new place? It's going to be another huge third rail thing. People are going to come and move, but at the same time, you're right. Eventually, you run out of things to cut, and if these buildings are going to cost millions of dollars to replace, how are we going to have support to do that?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is just, I'm saying this publicly and out loud because I want, I agree with that's a good place to start, but I think we need to signal to our communities that that's something that if we agree that it's appropriate to discuss, that we're starting that process and intend to use that data to help inform that process. So people can, you know, speak out.
Tyler?
I agree with what Kristen and Rebecca said. You know, one of the things, you know, I think we're discussing here, you know, around foreign language is the fact that, as Jay say, we have a lot of staff and not a lot of density. If we have our entire district on one campus and we design our schedule around that and have interoperability, because one of the things I don't understand is why we don't have a lot of interoperability between the high school and the middle school around things like industrial arts, physical education, world languages, you know, all of these systems where it's a clear track from where you start in middle school to where you end in high school in those things. If we can't maybe design the middle school schedule to align with the high school and then have that interoperability. I mean, the buildings are what, 100 feet apart, 200 feet apart? And there's not a lot of interoperability for services between them. You know, we have a centralized campus, and I don't feel like we're using that to its fullest. And world languages here is a perfect example. We have duplication when other districts are doing it, you know, more concisely, more impactfully, and more efficiently with less students. And I just think that if we go down consolidation, which I am 100% in favor of, we need to make sure that we're making all three of our schools interoperable.
Thanks, Tyler. Kristen?
So the assessment, Jay, that we're having done,
Yes.
so when you described it, you said it's just going to tell us everything that's wrong.
Yeah.
Is it going to tell us anything else?
Yes, it will tell us, like, what we get back from them. For the application, it's like all about what's wrong, but the part that we will get back from them will tell us, like, where things are good, so to speak, as well. So we'll be able to, again, like, if we're going to talk consolidation, like, what would that mean? What building could potentially, you know, undergo renovations for that to be able to happen, you know, that kind of thing. So
What about like assessing, like, for instance, the grade schools? because I think that's our first point, to consolidate, assessing,
Yeah.
okay, does Reedfield have room to absorb?
Right, exactly.
Is that
Yeah,
going to do that as
that's-
well?
Yes, it will come back with some of those recommendations
I
as
think
well.
that's really,
Yeah.
a good place to start.
David?
Yeah, I can't stress this enough too, and yeah, we kind of started the ball rolling, but with the knowledge of the last time doing this, we really all need to be on board, especially when we start talking and when it starts getting out to the public, because you're gonna find this is gonna be one of the biggest, hardest sticking points with them. Our constituents take this very seriously. They all will start seeing how it's gonna affect their own children. And from my experience the last time, it wasn't fun. Too many different messages getting out before the board got a chance to really talk about it together and have a game plan about how we were going to present this. We had to have, I really think, a lot of answers among us before we start even hinting around to the public. Because you're going to see it's not a fun thing.
Yeah.
So just piggybacking on to what David said, I really can't improve upon that too much, only just to say it's important that we're really transparent, that we have some form of communication so that we can control the conversation, and also recognizing that the feelings about it are going to be different based on where the school is. So people are going to have very different opinions on, so that's huge to understand. Not everyone's going to have the same good or bad. It's all going to be different, so.
So I would just say, that would be part of our planning. I mean, that would be a big part of any discussion of consolidation is how do we get information from the public, allow them to access us, to give us information, and then in turn, we provide information to them in transparency. And we have a great communications committee that could probably help with that. But yeah, that should be a big part of the plan, right?
And real quickly, I believe back then, I believe we hired a marketing firm and we got a lot of the town, different people invited, and it was like a 3-day thing with lunch and all this stuff to see what their feelings were. And that's something to consider too, just to piggyback off what you were saying.
Leslie?
Just to be sure, it's been clear though, that if we don't clearly say now that this effort that we're already going to start undertaking is absolutely in lockstep with starting the assessment of the other. So for all those that are listening and will listen a few days from now when it's on YouTube, like there is no not getting out, like we're doing it now. This has to be connected to that. So if people are able to start thinking about this from a multitude of avenues, there can be better preparation for once we can organize something that's bigger and the conversation goes a step.
Right. I kind of held all my comments. I have a lot I want to say, but I'm trying to condense it because I've thought about this for a long time. So we haven't really moved the needle on the budget in all this conversation. And to me, there's two paths here. David made a point that school consolidation is tough for people. Well, it is. But you either have a bill to pay to get all the kids equal education. We talk about, well, the language class only has 6 kids. I don't know. Are there any other classes that only have 6 kids? I've heard rumors of that in schools where there's classes with 6 or 7 kids. We're picking on I use the word picking on. We're picking on the language right now, but before I'm ready to make a decision, I want a full audit of all the classes. So that's the first request I have. And then the second thing is, I mean, we're talking, there's a bill to pay because if we cut ed techs at one school, I bet you if you did proportionate to a student per an ed tech, I bet you it's not equal. I put money on that right now. I guarantee that's the case. I'm confident in it. So if we're going to talk about proportionate, then let's look at the budget proportionally across the board and then start from that. That's how we're going to look at things. That's what I'm proposing. And then the second thing is, I would entertain a motion to form a committee to start the process of how we would look at school consolidation. And I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The majority of the board is on board with it. We can talk about this meeting after meeting. We talked about it last year. So now's the time to, well, what's the word I want to use? To move, I guess. So I would like to propose that if anybody's willing, a committee to start looking at how we may go about it so everyone can feel involved.
I motion to form a consolidation committee.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
Hold on, we're gonna write that all down, but no, keep going.
So that's what I have. We have a move and second, now discussion.
Yeah, okay, so it's a discussion of the committee?
Yeah, it's a discussion
Of the whole
motion.
thing? Okay.
Yeah.
So I just want to be really clear that the reason that we're discussing consolidation is because we just talked about this budget. And I know that that probably doesn't even need to be said, shouldn't need to be said, but I completely and utterly agree with your point. There is either a bill to pay, like nothing is free. You either get the school in your community and all of that benefit that comes with it, right? The benefits that come with that, and you pay money for that, or you give up those, I mean, it's just like budgeting at home. The difference is that we are the people that need to make those decisions. And so I know that we as a board want and welcome open, transparent, honest, discussion with all of the stakeholders. But really fundamentally, it is that either it costs and you are tolerant of increases continuously every year, and we want to keep all the great things that we have in all the places where they are, or we talk about doing something more efficient.
Any further discussion?
I think that couldn't have been said any better, and depending on what this study shows, we will reach a point where one of those schools is going to fall down around itself, and we're going to have to do something severe. And one of those towns is going to have to pay a pile of money to replace it. So I agree 100%. You can have it locally, but all the voters got to put their hands up and do it. We're trying to be respectful of our educators, our students, and also all the people that pay for this, all the taxpayers who haven't had kids in school, might never have had kids in school. And to try to balance that out, we absolutely have to turn over every rock. So you said that extremely well.
Just a quick reminder, this is great conversation, and I think we have reached our financial cliff. It's here, it's inevitable, it's impending doom. But this will take a lot of time, so we have to pass a budget for our current upcoming year. So we'll also not lose sight of our current focuses. But yeah, the conversation should be there. It's tough.
Right, I agree. So you got to start it at some point.
Well,
So,
this step,
yeah.
right, so this is going to also tell us what we, quote, qualify for.
Right.
And that will say a lot. That will say a lot right there. And we won't know that until
That-
end of summer.
Yeah, well, we'd be putting in, it's a whole process, so we're probably looking at a year to 18 months before we actually hear anything after we submit that.
Yeah.
And it could be longer than that, just being very honest, it could be up to 2 years before we actually hear anything, so.
So in the meantime, we can be doing this legwork with the community members.
Because I don't want to, Tyler, go ahead.
I was gonna add on to, irregardless of state funding, which would be great and would offset a lot of costs. I think if we go down this road, we need to look at a proposal that goes without state funding. Because the way I look at it is, we're at what, 22 million roughly now, and we're looking at cutting services. If we want to maintain the district and maintain the services that we have, there's going to come a point where we're either going to go down and just only do what the state requires us to do and nothing more, because that's all that the town's can afford, or we're going to have to look at some sort of financing and build a school, build something consolidated without state help. And I think we need, if we're going to go down this road, we need to look at basically having two paths. One where we get the state to help us, and the other where we find a way to finance it ourselves. Because I think a consolidation of our elementary schools is an inevitability unless we want massive increases to property taxes, which I don't believe is popular.
I'm not trying to dictate what the committee does. I just think we talked about, I just want to be clear. So I think all these weeds things, you're making some great points, can be figured out once the committee is formed. I don't want to take away discussion on consolidation, but I think we're getting down into the weeds a little bit. And I did cause some of that, I will admit, but that was, my intent was to kind of move on from that and try to get back to the budget. I think we're, yep, call for a vote.
Okay.
Yep. Yes.
So your motion is basically to start a committee to look at consolidation.
Correct.
Everyone clear?
Community, yes, community input, student input, teacher input, school board input, grandma's input, whoever wants, will make it work.
Everyone else set to vote? I'll start the roll call, okay. Wendy,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Tyler,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Patricia,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kelty,
Yes.
David T had to leave, Abby.
Yes.
So it passes unanimously. So I will work with you, Sean, and we'll start to hammer out the details.
All right. The next thing I'd like to do, and I'd like to ask is, we not make it, and I'm just gonna ask this, and people can tell me no, but I'm gonna ask, that we don't make any decisions on cuts tonight. I'd like to ask anybody around this table to add, or just go through everybody, and you can just say, no, I don't have anything, but does anyone have, I want everyone to ask their questions of Jay, because I think next meeting is gonna be a tough meeting, in my opinion. I don't want to prejudge, but I think it's going to be. So, and if you don't want to be put on the spot, that's okay too. Or if you have anything, just put your hand up. How's that? I don't need to go around. Put your hand up if you have anything you need to make decisions.
I just want, I have a question, but I just forgot it to move on.
Question. I know we went over this last year, but I don't remember. Guidance, at the elementary level, what do we have so far?
So we've got,
Where do
at
we have?
this point, we have 3 guidance counselors at this point. One in Reedfield, one in Manchester, and then the other one splits their time between Mount Vernon and Wayne. Is what it currently is. We have 1 at the middle school, just in case you're interested, and 2 at the high school.
Okay, so removing 1 guidance would then put 0.5 at Manchester and Reed.
Right. Probably what we would do is take the 2 and they would each pick up a big school and a small school. So as an example, you might have like Reedfield and Wayne and Manchester and Mount Vernon as an
Okay,
example.
I'm just looking at the numbers,
Yep.
and that's the largest one, and
Reedfield's the largest, yeah.
Is anyone on this side of the?
So I'm just curious, Jay, do you have time to do an audit of all the classes
Yes.
before the next meeting?
I can
Okay.
pull that out of Power School pretty easily. I actually can, I'm gonna get the cost for all the positions out to you guys, so you can consider that this week. And I can pull that report out that I can send out to the board fairly easily on the audit of class sizes across the district currently. So I can get that to the board as well. I can send that out to you all.
Are you talking about these factors, Jay?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I can get you the actual numbers there, so that way you can see what it looks like.
Sorry.
And I guess my opinion on all of these things is that we do need to get the percentage of an increase down, because I'm really concerned about the people who are on fixed incomes that maybe aren't going to be able to keep up with these increases, because we've had some pretty large increases over the past few years. So I would like to consider some of these options, but I do like your idea of auditing the classes to make sure that it's not just language that has low enrollment.
and that we're being equitable.
I'm gonna go to Tyler next.
Jay, you talked about having proposals for what it would look like if we eliminated these positions. Can we have that, like,
I can get
if we,
that
no,
together fairly quickly.
yeah, can we have that, like, what it would look like, you know, with the principal, with the guidance,
Yep.
with the nurse, with, you know, with the ed techs, with the literacy specialists, the middle school plan? Can we just have like all of that written out in just plain English
Yes.
to make this, like, I can visualize it in my head, but I want to see what it looks like in practice.
Right, and I will, like, I know Diane's already approached me and said she has some ideas for some plans, so, like, I'll ask her to share that with me and, you know, pass that all along, as we go forward here, so, yeah, and again, they would be proposals, not etched in stone, they might have to be a little fluid, but we can come up with some potential, scenarios, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Leslie?
Yeah, I want to make sure that I've understood some of the information that you've given us. This column that was around impact, was that a prioritization that you gave it?
Yeah, that
Got it.
was, yeah, and I went from like, number 1 was easy to number 3 would be hard, what I thought would be harder.
Harder decisions?
Yeah.
Okay, the next question is around the positions that were funded by the ESSER
Yep.
funds. That was around COVID support?
Yes.
Okay, so at this point, right, the kids that were in kindergarten when 2020 hit, they're in 4th grade and they're about to wrap up with 1 more year in elementary school. So, so I just say that from
Yep.
a data point that I don't know if there is a direct correlation to that making it, that any progress that's been made has been helpful, that in losing any of these, we're sort of back on track pre-COVID. I'm not saying this is true, and I'm not just trying to sort of frame out, is there a possibility that there's any correlation between our data that supports that better than it did just last year and the year before, where those kids were still sort of in the middle of elementary school, you know, just for that place. Other than that, I think I'm good.
Anybody else? If you think of stuff, try to get it to Jay quicker, just because this is a lot of work I do.
I know you guys have to think before you get to the next Wednesday's meeting. So.
All right, if we're good there, did you get a motion for, oh, what, sorry, citizens' comments, I skipped that, sorry. Is there anybody online, Diane? All right, nobody online, nobody on the clipboard, anyone want to give their piece? All right, I know Mr. Boston probably didn't give a speech, all right, next we will consider a motion for executive session.
We'll be going to executive session to consider the evaluation of superintendent pursuant to MRSA Title I, Section 4056A. Second.
Haven't been moved and seconded, call for a vote.
All righty. Wendy,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
David G,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Tyler,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Patricia,
Yes.
Rebecca,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kelsey.
Yes.
David is left. Abby,
Yes.
it's unanimous. Can I ask the board to hang out? Okay, out of session.
We're out of executive session. Diane's ready. All right, I will entertain a motion, please.
I move to approve the superintendent increase of salary and contract for extension for 2024, 26,
She meant
For
to
2
stop
years.
at 20,
Yeah.
for 2 years. There you go.
Yeah, it's for 2 years.
And forever after that.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any
Who
discuss-
seconded? Sorry. Oh, it was Pat. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Sorry, Sean.
Any discussion? I guess I'll just say quick I like stuff on the record quickly. Jay, we appreciate all that you do for our district and for our students and the staff. And we look forward to working with you in the foreseeable future to make RSU 38 the best place we can.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, we'll call for a vote.
so you can actually do, there's nobody online.
Oh, yeah, nobody online, that's right.
No, I'm here.
All right,
I'm here.
unanimous.
Oh,
All right, we gotta do
okay,
it. We gotta do
okay,
it.
so Tyler, what's your vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Tyler.
All right, it's unanimous. Motion to adjourn? Have a good night.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jay.